If you are curious about JSON Web Tokens or would like to add authentication to your project, then this video is for you. Today we're going to explore JWT Authentication and build authentication server using Golang. I also walk you through how to connect it with the frontend. By the end of the video, you'll have everything you need to implement it for your own projects. So with that being said, make yourself comfortable, grab a coffee, and let's dive right in. JSON Web Token has acronym JWT and it's pronounced as JWT. Here their official website, jwt.io, and basically this token is used for authentication and authorization, but also for other purposes like when you need any secure data transferring between client and server. But today we're gonna explore only a case with authentication and authorization. All right, so let's dive right in. We have the token. It's in encoded state on the left-hand side and here on the decoded state. It consists of three parts. The first one is the header, the second one is payload, and the third is signature. So every part is basic-C4 encoded. So if I will go to some website like this and would like to check their decoded state, I can get exactly strings that are visualized here, except for the signature. We'll talk about it in a moment. Alrighty, header. Header usually has two properties. First is algorithm, which is used, and type. Algorithm will be checked by authentication server every time as a part of verification of the token. Here the other algorithm that are also commonly used for JWT authentication. Payload. Payload has some properties that are required to authorize your user in most of the cases. First one is subject, usually it's user ID. We have name, so it's username, and issued at, so time when the token was issued. The most important property here is issued at, because token shouldn't live forever. It should live for some specific period of time. And this property allows us to track it. So when token is actually got expired and no longer valid. But for your application logic, you can add any other properties also, and those are also optional or just suggested to use. Okay, let's move to the last part, which is signature. As I mentioned, here used algorithm HMAC SHA-256, and as the first property to this hash function, we'll provide basic-C4 encoded header and basic-C4 encoded payload. So basically this string. And the next parameter that we will provide to this hash function will be our secret. So let's say some random string that we will generate and store somewhere on secret vault on our server. And optional, you can basic-C4 encode it also, but yeah, this is usually how it looks like. And the good news about this signature and why JWT is so popular is that data cannot be changed. So if I would like to change, for instance, here name to mine, as you can see, the signature got changed also with every symbol that I'm typing. So when server will verify signature, it will find out that it's not valid because of the data change. And this is the benefit and why it's commonly used. I hope that makes sense. Now let's discuss authentication algorithm. So our application is translation app, so it translates some lexical item from one language to another. And this is internals. This is the algorithm, how it works. We have frontend and we have backend, and our application also provides authentication mechanism, so login, logout, sign up, and we use JSON Web Tokens. So when client would like to make sign in, he provides username and password. What server does, server verifies this user's username and password and then generates two tokens, the tokens that I showed you before. Like it consists of three parts: header, payload, and signature. And the access token is short-lived token, and refresh token is a long-lived token, and it's stored in the database. Only refresh token. So access token has usually expiration date within 1 hour, and refresh token expires in 30 days. But all of these parameters are configurable also. It depends on your application and how would you make it secure. As secure you would like to make it, the less time for both of the tokens should be. But take into account the number of the requests to your server will increase also. Okay, so let's get back to the algorithm. So we generate this access and refresh tokens that I mentioned, and then we add them to the cookies of the response and provided them to the client. So then client got authenticated inside of the application, and every time when he performs some of the actions which are required the backend, he sends in the authorization header with the keyword bearer and access token to the backend. And we verify firstly the signature, and then allow to the user perform action or not, depending on the verification state, and provide the response to the user. That's how login works. And yeah, let's move to the next part. There can be a situation that will happen periodically when tokens gonna expire. Let's cover situation when access token has expired, but refresh token is not. In this situation, for instance, user would like to translate something, but his access token got expired and refresh not, as I mentioned. We have to make refresh request to the backend and provide the refresh token from the cookies. Server verify the refresh token. Do we have it in the database? Is the payload legit? And things like that. And then if everything is fine, it generates new access and refresh tokens and then provide it back to the client. And then frontend service performs actual action, for instance, in our case, translation. And server again verifies just access token and allows to perform this action. So in our case, it's translation, and we provide the response to the client. And for the client itself, this logic with the refresh of the tokens is not visible. The only downside for him can be is that as far as we make extra call, he might notice some latency, but it won't happen that often. So for instance, yeah, every hour or even slower, but depending on your server capabilities, the latency should be very, very small so that user won't notice it even. Also, you need to take into account that my situation happened when your refresh and access token got expired, both. What's going to happen in this case? So when we send request to the server to refresh our tokens and it checks that refresh token is actually expired and no longer valid, we saying to the client that he has to log in again. So, and user again goes to the beginning, enters his username and password, and we allow him to enter the application. So if our refresh token is expiration date is set to 30 days, it means that if user didn't visit the application for 30 days, didn't use it, then we're probably gonna perform that action. But if user uses application periodically, like once a day or once a week, a refresh token shouldn't be expired. It should be get refreshed all of the time. I hope that makes sense. And this is the algorithm. So that's pretty much how it works. On the next step, we'll have a look how it works in the Postman. Okay, now let's see how it works in practice. We'll start from Postman. Okay. Here, our request, sign in, here the body, username and password, the same values I used for testing purpose, and we're gonna perform this part, authentication, sign in, request, and all of those actions gonna be performed by the backend. Okay, so we entered the URL, entered body for the request. Let's make it. And in the response, we've got cookies, refresh and access token, and I set expiration time for 30 seconds for testing purpose. So because of that, let's quickly take it and use for translation. And I would like to translate the word amazing from English to Polish. And yeah, as you can see, I performed request and it worked successfully. And it should expire in a few seconds. Let's have a look how the token actually looks like. Yeah, here the algorithm, here the type JWT, here the expiration date. As you can see, it's soon gonna expire. Issuer, my application name, subject is user ID. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And now token should be expired, and once token got expired, I'm no longer able to perform such actions like translation. Yeah, invalid or expired token, and got response for 3 forbidden, which is good. And if I will log in again, I can get the new token and can authorize again. Another thing, as far as we have refresh token also, instead of login, we can emulate refresh operation. So we made sign in. Here's our refresh token. I'll use it. And yeah, instead of sign in, I will type refresh. And pretty much I don't need to do anything because it's already set it up in my cookies. I'll just click sign in. Yeah. And I've got 200 and I've got new access token and new refresh token. This is how this part works with the refresh. And let's try to do some other testing. So for instance, let's type incorrect username, which doesn't exist, or incorrect password for the user for sign in. Yeah, as you can see, unauthorized. Let's sign in with the correct username and password, but change the access token. So we taking access token, which didn't expire yet, and I will just, yeah, or even I can just directly specify it here. It's not valid, it's valid, it's fine, and I add one symbol, it's no longer valid. But if I remove the symbol, it works. Another thing that we can test is that am I able to change some of the properties? For instance, I can put some longer expiration date, or things like that. So let's get one more token and change the value here. So for instance, subscription will be 10. Copy the token and put to here. Yeah, and we got forbidden because token got changed. So, and signature is no longer valid. Okay, seems like it works as expected. Now I will show you the code part and how to integrate it with the frontend. Now let's have a look how JWT Authentication works in the app. So let's do login first. I enter username, password, and here the operation has been completed. So we can see that I made one request for sign in, and I received in the response 2 cookies, one for access token and another one for refresh token. And if I'll go to application section, here I can see my access and refresh tokens in the cookies. Here, as you can see, I haven't set all parameters because it's done for local testing purpose. Yeah, but for production, you have to have HTTP and secure and other properties set. Okay, so now we're in the application and let's have a look on how application will behave with JWT tokens. So let's translate something, for instance, just for testing purpose test. As you can see, as far as I have expiration date for my token just 30 seconds, very, very small. We firstly made refresh because authentication token got expired, and we've got two new tokens, one access token and the second one is refresh token. And we did translation after it. But for user, it wasn't noticeable. It was very, very quick. I think it took just a couple of milliseconds. Yeah. 87 milliseconds for refresh and 6 milliseconds for actual translation. Okay, and yeah, if I will translate, probably we'll have the same because already 30 seconds passed, but once access token is still living, we can do only one request to the backend. So because of that, you need to set some meaningful value for expiration date for your access token. I set in my production app for 1 hour, and for refresh token, it's 30 days. Yeah, so this way I make much less requests to my server. But to make it more secure, essentially better to have smaller and smaller amount of time for your expiration date. Cool. Let's have a look now on the front-end and back-end implementation one by one. Okay, now the most interesting part. Let's have a look into the code of the backend. So as I mentioned, my code is written in Golang, and here's my folder structure. I have in CMD main file where I start my application, and I have internal package where mostly everything is located. Here we can see like a bunch of other packages. The main where I store models, infrastructure where some third-party things are located, like connection to the database, call to third-party API, and so on. Middleware, it's made for authorization, basically, to check the signature of access token. Server, where HTTP related logic is located, and use cases, it's where business logic is located. Pure business logic, pure code, no protocols, nothing. Okay, and yeah, I follow kind of clean architecture, but there are not that many interfaces because it's my pet project. Yeah, kind of neglected here a little bit. Maybe we'll improve later. Alrighty, here I set up in the very beginning all required environment variables for JWT API, which I use for translations, Postgres database, secrets, and other information. Then I set up connection for Postgres database, set up duration for JWT access and refresh tokens, set up a repository for authentication server, then use case layer, then goes repository layer for translation, and then server layer for translation. Then here we have API groups. For API, it's mainly like for translations and accounts that user will be able to delete his accounts and will be able to translate some lexical items. And here groups for authentication. So like sign in, sign up, and refresh of the token. And here I start the server. Some parts I commented because I on production use TLS, and yeah, it was just too lazy to create feature flags for it. Because yeah, I will show this demo once and that's it. Okay, yeah, so let's delve into it step by step. Firstly, we're probably mostly interested in the sign-in logic. Let's delve into it. So here's my logic for server layer. Basically, I get from JSON from the request with username and password, and then I convert it to the Golang struct. Then I execute the use case layer with my authentication service. and provide their username and password. Here we perform sign in. So just query to the database to check if the user actually, if username and password are actually valid. So if we have a look into sequence diagram, it's this step, verify user's username and password. Then once we verified it, we move on to the next part where we generate, refresh, and access tokens. The principle of generating refresh and access token pretty much the same, this step, but with refresh tokens, we have different operation time. And I also have this extra step where I update it in the database. So essentially, I think I can show it here. In my database, I have several columns. One of them username, the second is password, and the third is refresh token. So in this step, where I update refresh token, I update it in the database in users table. Yeah, so once it's got updated, it's got generated. Let's move to the previous part. Yeah, we return it. I think we discussed it in, yeah. We return two tokens, access and refresh token. And then I enrich the response with the token information that I've got. So set these cookies, one with the name access token, other with the refresh token, and other properties. The most interesting one here, expires at, so duration of access token and duration of refresh token, and also those fields are very important. I've just disabled it for local environment, but on production I have them enabled. Secure, make your cookies available only HTTPS. HTTP only makes it available only HTTP protocols. And same side prevents you from cross-origin risks. And yeah, that's pretty much it about login. Let's have a look into sign up. Sign up gonna be pretty much the same. Go to the main file. Yeah. Yeah, as you can see, got username, password, has a credential, converted it to Golang struct, then perform sign up. So we check if we have the user already in the database. Then basically we add this username and password records to the database. And we have one more extra step where we add refresh token there also. And generate access token, so pretty much the same steps. Let's have a look how tokens are generated. So we have those claims for the payload section, and here issuer, it's my application, subject, it's user ID, and expiration time for refresh token expiration time. So we sign with the secret, and we get user ID from subject because my subject is user ID, and then update it in the database, refresh token. And I use for that library this Golang JWT. It's open source. Yeah. So now we know how sign in and sign up work. Now let's have a look into refresh, which is more interesting and more complex. Okay, so let's say user would like to translate something, and the client checks that access token is expired, but refresh is still valid, so it makes request to the my server. And yeah, we verify refresh token first. So we get it from the cookies, take value, and perform refresh token operation. So we check if it's valid, then generate a new refresh token, a new access token, as mentioned here, and provide it to the client. How we check if it's valid? Firstly, we parse it with a secret. Then I check expiration date, if token is still valid, get subject, check if we actually have this user in the database, and that's pretty much it from validation. And we perform the same, add generated access and refresh tokens to the cookies and send it back to the client. Cool. I think on the backend, only one part is left, which is very interesting. Is this one. So user will get refresh token and access token. How server should handle this authorization header for every user's request. For this, I have the middleware. So as you can see here, for this group, which is API, I have middleware where I validate access token. So I get token from this authorization header, and then I inject the token from the header and check if this token valid or not. Logic is almost the same as for refresh, but we don't check in the database. We only check the signature, we check the time, and that's it. If signature and time is fine, we just proceed further. So in this case, we don't need to make extra call to the database, which is nice. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. How backend works. I will leave these diagrams, which will help to understand it also. And I have backend available on my GitHub repository. It's open source, and you will find the link under the description of this video. So now we're gonna move on to the frontend part. Frontend. How JWT authentication is implemented on frontend. Okay, firstly, let me show you this part from app.js we'll start. It's kind of also entry point in React applications. So I have here routes, one route for Auth, and another one is protected route with the main application. So user has to pass this protected route first to come there. And the protected route checks if user is actually authorized. So authorized means user has a valid access or refresh token. Okay, so firstly, user have to log in to application. So we go to this page. We have handler for login and sign up. It's pretty simple. We check a form valid with all the inputs. Then get username and password from the inputs and send request to the backend. If request completed successfully, then we navigate to the main page. The same for sign up. And here the kind of interceptor, which we use with every request to our backend. So whenever I would like to request, for instance, translation for my app, I always come to this part first, and I check from cookies if we have access token. And then I check expiration date. If it's not expired, then everything's fine. We append authorization header and send request further. If it expires, then we need to perform refresh. Let's assume that refresh is valid. So we go and send a request for refresh to the backend and get new pair of access in refresh token. But if refresh token is also expired, then we move user to the login page. Or also if we tried to make refresh, but we failed. We also moved user to the main page where he have to log in again. That's pretty much it from the frontend part. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please comment down below. I will answer them for you. That's a wrap for today. I hope you found this video useful and feel ready to apply what you've learned to your own projects. If you found this content useful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.